Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone, wherever you're based. Welcome to Talks at Google. I'm Nalini Singh from Google Cloud, and today I couldn't be more excited to be welcoming our guest, Durreen Shahnaz, who happens to be the first woman to ever work in Wall Street, who's the founder and CEO, who's the founder and CEO of IIX, and is a pioneer in social impact as well as impact investing. So, hoping to hear more from Doreen on her intro and a lot more of her stories. Welcome, Doreen, to the show.
Thank you, Nalini. Thank you. Thank you for having me. But just one thing, I wasn't the first woman to work on Wall Street. There were many women before me, but I was the first
First,
Bangladeshi woman to
Bangladesh.
work on Wall Street.
That might be my nerves
But thank you
talking.
very much for a kind
Yeah.
introduction.
And Doreen, tell me one thing. Like we've seen and read a lot about you, but I recently went through your book in just 3 days, and as I was telling you, it touched me quite a bit. Being a brown immigrant woman myself in the tech world, um, after all these decades of working on your mission and changing careers, moving countries, what made you write this book now?
Well, I think I always say that something happens to you when you're in your 50s as a woman. You've gone through a long journey in life, and I think in my case, it was a journey which was country, multi-continental. And I think I really felt that what my journey was all about was really power imbalance and really sort of seeking how I could play my part in making the world more inclusive and equitable. And so it has been an interesting journey. And I just felt that it was time for me to sit down and share that because the life is, again, not, having a unicorn or making a pile of money. For me, I really felt that I needed to convey the message that life is so much richer when you have a North Star and you actually go through a very concerted journey to get to that North Star. And for me, it really was how do I play a role in the power imbalances? And yeah, so that was the book. It was 750 pages, so it's a good thing that the publisher edited it and brought it down to I think 278 or something.
I mean, I would want to read the full version too, but that's just me. I want you to take us back to the beginning, right? Like I read the book, but we have audience today that want to know more about your journey before they read the book, obviously. How did it all start for you?
Yes. So I think what I really tried to do was I tried to sort of go back and think about all the important events of my life that really brought the little pieces together for me in creating that path, what I journeyed on. So that first, I guess the morsel, the little mosaic of my life really was the 1971 war in Bangladesh that actually helped create Bangladesh. And it was a very bloody war. It was 9 months. It was 3 million people were killed. 500,000 women were raped in rape camps. It was very brutal. And I was 3 years old, and those were my first memories. And I think even at that early age, I really saw the courage that my mother had in terms of navigating the war. And also in terms of really seeing the power dynamics, when the soldiers would come in, who could have easily just taken her away. But how she not only protected herself, but actually protected the family and also a lot of our relatives, young relatives, who were hiding in our house. There were over 20 of them. So for me, it really was sort of seeing that courage, seeing that incredible sense of practicality in playing the power imbalance and coming out winning. And so I think for me, that really stayed with me. And I think when I started writing the book, so I just really naturally started, with the war. And I sadly, I think for the readers, they'll be able to relate a lot to what's happening now, in Ukraine, in the Middle East, in the southern, certain countries in Africa. And you will, the war doesn't change. War still kills people. War still, destroys everything. And war still depends on women to actually do the healing. So yes, I think a lot of people will be able to relate to it when they open the book and start, with the scenes of the war.
And it's very interesting that you talk about your mom quite a lot in the book, but especially in your early years. Was she the original defiant optimist? Like, do you look at her as the person that started it all for you, or
Absolutely. And I think, listen, I mean, and I think when I sat down to write the book, I think it also helped me come to terms with a lot of things, I mean, and we all have complex relationships, with various relatives. And I think mother-daughter relationship is always a complex one. And I think it helped me come to terms with her, our relationship, and then also what she went through. I was the fourth girl. And in our culture, having girls is really still sadly looked down upon. And I was the fourth girl. So she got a lot of grief. As a matter of fact, my father's side, they were going to get my father married off again, because apparently my mother would never produce a son. So I think for my mother, maybe I represented a lot of failure, because her success was seen only through what she could produce, as a baby making machine. And I think that was so sad, and that was so limiting, for someone who was so intelligent. And I think for me, it was really looking at my mother as the original defiant optimist. That's why she really pushed us, and made sure that we actually were independent. She also, in her own way, carved out a life for herself where she was I would call a quiet entrepreneur. And then also the defiant optimist that my grandmother was. I mean, again, my mom was 18 when she was married off. My grandmother was 11, on both my paternal and maternal side, and neither of them actually were literate as well. And even for my grandmother, who was very subservient. I mean, I saw her through the lens that how, when there's a power imbalance, and if you're the one who is actually on the shorter, stick side, you do try to find your balance somehow. And I just found a lot of courage, when I looked at my grandmother, and who you would not actually think, could represent that. So maybe, if Nalini, if you're okay, maybe I can read a
yeah?
page from the book. Uh, it's a very popular scene, I should say, in the book.
And I
Where
think I know which one you're talking about, but I would love for
I'm
everyone to
sure you do.
listen. Yeah.
I'm sure you do. Okay. So I purposely didn't use any of my family's name in the book. So, and then also, I called my grandfather, this is my maternal grandfather, I called him Dadu. So that's what I said in the book. And my grandmother, I called her Boo Boo. So that's, what she's known as here. Um, so it's very interesting, again and again. Just when you hear the words, you'll see how people also justify the position that they're in. Once Dada returned from Calcutta and joined the judicial service, Bubu's existence revolved around taking care of him and setting up a home wherever Dadu's position took them. Over the decades, it was her job to clean and fold his clothes. It was her job to prepare foods he liked and to make certain that his yogurt was just right consistency. It was her job to clean and polish Dadu's hookah, the 3 foot high water pipe with a brass base. But never, no matter how faithfully she cooked, cleaned for Dadu, she could bring herself look into his eyes, and never she could call him by his name. For as long as I can recall, my grandmother referred to my grandfather, the father of her only daughter, in a formal term as Judge Sahib or Mr. Judge. It was as if she never shared a bed with this man, as if she lived in awe and perhaps even fear of him. Yet the kitchen was her domain. Bubu would sit on the floor and grind spices with shilpata, the Bengali version of stone mortar and pestle, and spend hours in the garden to find the right ingredient to make her bhorta, a side dish of mashed herbs, spiced seeds to be mixed with the rice, to spice up our otherwise humble meals. Knowing my love for food, Bubu would indulge me in little treats of bread when I used to get tired of eating rice. She would heat up the bread for me and gently admonish me. How can you be a good Bengali girl if you don't like rice? When you get married, you'll need to cook rice every day. What do you think? You'll marry a Ingres Sahib, meaning a white man. and eat potatoes all the time. As Boo Boo watched me drink milk and eat my bread, she would give a lot of free advice on how to cook a special dish or take care of the fruit trees. Occasionally, she would add in some advice on boys and men. Remember, men are like children, she would say. They don't understand the ways of the world very well. That's why we women have to take care of them and do the thinking for them. Let them scream and shout. They don't have power, we do. I would just nod my head. While Dadu ate his lunch in silence, alone precisely at 1 p.m. per his Ayurvedic practice, Bubu would stand and serve him, anticipating his needs. Once Dadu had finished his lunch and smoked his hookah and retreated to his room for his afternoon nap, the whole household would come to a sleepy, slow midday rest. Bubu, who took her midday rest after others, waited for this moment. When it was time for Dadu's after meal smoke, I would watch as Bubu carefully placed the burning charcoal on the clay tobacco holder. I watched as she blew gently, steadily into the clay receptacle to get the tobacco burning just the right temperature. I was the only person in the household who did not sleep in the afternoon. It was the perfect time to climb trees, play with my slingshot, or sneak a taste of the various fruit pickles Bubu had put in glass jars out in the sun to marinate. But sometimes before starting my afternoon adventure, I watched as my grandmother transformed into someone else entirely. Looking around the house and making sure nobody was close by, she would sit next to the hookah in Dadu's chair, a comfortable wicker chair nobody else was allowed to use, on the veranda. She would settle in, take a hold of the pipe in her hand, close her eyes, and inhale deeply from the pipe. With that inhale, Bubu changed before my eyes. She would take in the loud burble of air bubbles in the brass water base of the hookah, and then languidly open her eyes and let out the smoke, her lips curving into a smile. Hiding behind the curtain, I wondered at her bravery and defiance. In a society where only men smoked and only the elder men smoked in public, here was Bubu smiling, nodding, and happily smoking away. Smoking the pipe was for her reclamation of something, an assertion of her right to take up space. There are many ways to be a rebel, she seemed to say. Observing their marriage, I vowed I would never live like my mother or my grandmother. I did not want an arranged marriage. I did not want to be a child bride. I did not want a disinterested or unloving husband to be treated as a servant or a trophy wife. I did not want to get respect only when I bore a son. No, when I grew up, I would neither allow a system to dictate my life nor settle for a false sense of power. I would not be a rebel in secret only. I would inhale joy and independence without worrying about who was looking.
It's beautiful. I can almost imagine her sitting there and like taking
Smoking
in
the
her
hookah.
pipe. Yeah, it's just it's such an independent woman in my mind. Looking at her like that. In but thank you for sharing the story, Doreen. Tell me, so you talked about. It looks like your early childhood really motivated you to be an open rebel, which you just read, and not someone that's a rebel in secrecy, right? That's something that clearly comes out. So from your childhood in Bangladesh, and then you studied in the Philippines, and I remember that you went to the US to study arts, if I'm not wrong, not finance, not
Mm.
that
Liberal
was
arts.
not your
Mhm.
liberal arts, and that was not your plan to be in finance, but somewhere down the line things changed. How did that
Mhm.
happen?
Well, I think, I come from a family where I would say, and again, it's part of for your audience who don't know the Indian subcontinent very well. I'm Bengali, and there is a bit of an intellectual snobbery among Bengalis. So we like to think ourselves to be, the intellectual, superiors. I don't know what it is, but I always find it hilarious. But I think the whole notion that I wanted to go and study liberal arts and was really not something my parents really they were opposed to at all. But what they're opposed to was me going to America. So they really, really did not want me to go. So I went on my own on full scholarship. They actually wanted me to go to India to study. And my father, I still remember, bought the application for Lady Shri Ram College in Delhi.
Okay.
And he's like, "You're going here," because one of my elder sisters was in medical school in Delhi. So, but I was adamant to go to America. Now, not that I ever been to America, not that I have even stepped foot there, not that we ever vacationed anywhere, none of that. But for me, it just everything I read about it, everything that I saw, It really was that spirit of being able to speak my mind and be myself. And I do feel I went to the right university. So I went to Smith College, which is one of the original women's colleges when all the Ivy League schools were men. These were the counterparts, and there were, seven women's colleges, and they're called Seven Sisters. So, and Smith was, and still is, extremely strongly embedded in feminism. So for me, it really was incredible to go to that school where I always say I found my voice. I found my voice as a woman. I found my voice as a human being. And really, I think the school helped me celebrate my womanhood and also celebrate the fact that I could actually do anything I wanted. And I think it really was there where I was very much an activist. And frankly, I would have been as comfortable at Berkeley or wherever. But I think for me, the big thing was 1987. That was the first financial crisis I experienced, and just reading about it, I remember everything was just kind of coming to an halt. And right before then, the whole anti-apartheid movement, which I was part of, and made Smith divest from South Africa. So it all sort of showed me that no matter what, in the social ills the world that has, it can be solved if you actually took on the most powerful system, which is the financial system. So for me, I really felt that I didn't want to be screaming and shouting from the periphery, but I really wanted to be in it and understand how it works and how I could actually change it to make it more inclusive. So, I like to think big. So, much to everyone's surprise, so I ended up in Morgan Stanley, after I graduated.
Yeah, and you mentioned like throughout your journey of growing up and then going into America, you mentioned being the different one, being the like an imposter in a country. I remember a phase where you mentioned that you were the uh, brown woman in a tight dress in a going for your interviews, and like the social event of the bank where you're ordering wine that you'd have no idea about, but you're faking the confidence and making sure you order the right
Mhm,
wine. So like at times like this, when you all felt like an imposter on the inside, but you still faked and
mhm.
pretended, and then eventually got your way and got to where you wanted to be, like what were the learnings? What can we learn from it? Like how to fake it till you make it. It's always the question, right?
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think for me, the big thing was with all of this, I really feel my North Star was the fact that I wanted to take on the system. It sounds almost trite when I say that, but I really mean it. So what that meant was when people sort of say, "Oh my God, you're the immigrant story," I kind of am and I'm not, because I never went to America with the thought that I'm going to stay there, right? And that's the immigrant story. So for me, it really was, I'm going to go to America. I want to learn everything I can and be able to use that to make other countries rise up as well, right? So that really is not the immigrant story. The immigrant story is really more, I'll go to America, I'll make a lot of money, I'll bring my family in, we'll all have a better life than we did, okay, wherever we came from.
That was not your
That
ambition.
never was my thing, ever. So I think for me, faking till I make it, whatever needs to happen, it was all driven 100% by the fact that I need to learn this if I'm going to change the system. It was never about, oh, I'm going to learn this so I can make more money and get the promotion. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I do think that I had always a long term game plan. And I think my long term game plan was never about me making a ton of money or me doing all of this. It was really, the long term plan really was about us, about actually changing a system for women, changing a system for the underserved, and really sort of taking on this global north, global south differences, right? I mean, think about it. In the world today, I mean, these statistics are staggering, and I think your audience will appreciate it. All of you work in one of the richest companies in the world. 2,000 billionaires in this planet, 2,000 billionaires, they own more wealth than 4.6 billion people of this planet. Okay?
Yeah.
That is absolutely ridiculous. right? We have the Gini coefficient. Again, all of you are smart, Gini coefficient, the income inequality, measurement. It's just going wider and wider and wider. So while we are all, of course, concerned about the climate, the reality is we can't be thinking about that in a vacuum, because along with the climate, we have a global population which is also suffering. And again, a big portion of that who suffer more actually are the women. So I think for me, it really was the fact that I just could not be selfishly just thinking about myself and my family. For me, I really felt that there was a bigger cause, and I still feel that. And I think it's really satisfying when you see that your work is impacting, so many people, and it's, helping the climate. It's actually moving the needle, right? So I do feel that in terms of kind of having that courage, I think the courage comes when you know it's not your journey alone. You're making this journey for a million others.
And I mean, I don't even know where to start. But you said that there was a North Star, but it's not like you had it figured out from the beginning, right? You were going towards a North Star. You knew you wanted to do something for the underserved, but it's like what I learned from your book was that it's okay to not have 100% clarity on how you're going to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is exactly the point, Nalini. And I'm glad that you got that, because you're not supposed to know the answer overnight. You're not supposed to know the answer within, few years. It really is that learning. It's those blows, it's those victories, it's those tears, it's those smiles, that actually will help you get to where you want to go to. And there'll come a point in life you'll say, oh my God, I actually did it, right? I actually did it. And I think, um, maybe again, it's old fashioned, for me to kind of think this way. But, I just literally just wrote an article for Fast Company, and I'm curious to see how much they edited over the weekend. And I start the article by saying that, I'm doing all these interviews now for the book, and I've now had at least 4 or 5 men who interviewed me, who asked me why, when I grew IIX, I've been now running it for 14 years, and we're very successful. And, um, you know, we have been able to really move the market, right, and make finance do good.
Yeah.
And so these men have all asked me the same bizarre question. And they said, it looks like you really took an approach of bringing in everyone, like an ecosystem approach. You go to these countries, you work with the accounting firms, law firms, civil society, you're working with the financial system, you spend so much time figuring it out, to bring everyone in. Why? You could have been a unicorn if you actually focused more on just your company's growth. And it always amazed me when they asked me this question. And I said, maybe the problem with this world is we're taking a male centric view of what success and growth is, right?
Yeah.
Unicorn is a mythical creature. And unicorn, of course, is also a mythical creature created by men. And I won't even go into all the other male fantasies that go with it. But I
Yeah.
think the reality is, with unicorn, this is a valuation, and I'm a finance person, and we all know what valuations, how fake it can be as well.
Yeah.
These are just completely made up in terms of, what we aspire for the company's value to be. But just think about it. This valuation is based on how, I'm going to be very flippant about it, but how people carry themselves. What's their gender? What do they look like? Right? Look at FTX.
Yeah.
Like overnight it was $50 billion, right? And then the next day the guy is a criminal. So it just feels like the market is making these people into these, gods, and then pulling them down. So I said, I actually like our growth. I like the fact that I brought everyone with me, in our growth. I like the fact that our work has impacted over 159 million people, across 54 countries. This is astounding. The fact that we have made financial system change and be inclusive and really connect the back street to Wall Street.
Yeah.
um, I'm proud of it. So I think, again, really sort of for us to have the courage to kind of say, what is our success and how are we actually benchmarking ourselves? And I refuse to benchmark myself with something that's created, by a group of men who just are in their own little, having their own little party of billionaires.
Yeah, and like they are going on giving a fake North Star to so many entrepreneurs out there. I think like
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely. No, that's exactly it. And I do think that, again, I mean, I sound old fashioned when I say all these, right? But
no,
I
you don't.
believe in kind of, taking time. I believe in thinking, happening slowly. I believe in working hard. I work really hard. I'm 55 years old. I still work 14 hours a day. And I like it.
Yeah.
I actually like it. So I think the thing is, these are all very old fashioned sort of way of looking at it, but hey, it works for me.
I mean, it's just a different way of looking at it. And trust me, there are enough and more slow entrepreneurs out there that are just not in the news as often. So we just, with the sample bias that's out there, we only see the people that are making the news because of these big valuations. But like you mentioned, which reminds me of the way you came up with a way to measure companies and a way to
Hmm.
measure startups and a way to measure impact which is beyond just financial metrics, right? Why
Hmm.
don't you tell us a little bit about that, because I
Sure,
find
sure.
like that's really intriguing.
Yes. No, thank you for asking that, because I'm very, very proud of it, because, that now has become, that was my research when I was a professor. And that has now become sort of the foundation of sort of social accounting, that's now used in the impact investing space. So what I actually did was, in my research as a professor, I really sort of went back to my days. I left Morgan Stanley, then I went and worked at Grameen Bank, which was, I frankly, I say that sort of really defined my life, these two experiences. And what I saw there was, how they call this in the nonprofit world, monitoring and evaluation. So it's almost like you do a project and the project is finished, then you go back and say, oh, okay, so did we have any impact? Oh, did the life change of the people, etc. So what happens is, even if it doesn't, the project was not successful, you can't do anything about it, right? So it's kind of very retrospective. Whereas finance is very forward looking, right? So
Yeah.
basically what I said was, when I sat down someone who has worked both a nonprofit and for profit and finance and non-financial world, I said, okay, how do I bring these two together? How do I bring kind of the economic development and finance together in terms of measuring impact? So this is where I almost I took a lot of learnings from Maslow's hierarchy of need, which, again, if you all are familiar with it, it really kind of starts off at what defines human on their need. So the first need is always food and shelter, and then it sort of keeps on going up, right? So I took that and I said, okay, if I take that as a basis of understanding and say, okay, with the company, where does the company start? The company starts with a mission, and with that mission, the operation of the company, what is it doing in terms of the social changes it's making, in the lives of their employees, lives of their customers? And then sort of I say, what is the environmental change? What is the financial sustainability? How is that looking at the whole community? And then what I did was looking at each of these stakeholders and saying, okay, how is the company's operation impacting them, as the primary beneficiary, secondary, and tertiary, and the outcomes that's happening. So if it's a woman, if I'm making a loan to a woman, so how is that changing? You'll say, okay, now she has more money, but great, but that's just an output. Is this actually making her have better diet because she can now eat better food? Is it actually allowing her to have some more freedom because she actually doesn't have to work all the time, right? Is it actually allowing her to able to fix the house? That means that she's having better shelter. Does this mean that she can send her kids to school, right? So these are the secondary beneficiaries. Does that mean that they have better health care because they actually can afford to buy medicine? So all of these things are indicators which we then start quantifying and putting this quantification of how that change is happening. So it really is the change of before and after, and quantifying the delta. So if you can think about it, what it did over the years. So when I helped create this accounting system. So we basically collect thousands of points of data on each of these companies. But the bigger thing with all of this is when we're measuring the impact, we have also seen over the years that it also has a direct impact on reducing the operational risk of the company. Because if again, it's a no-brainer. If you're actually creating a company that people care about, that people actually can relate to, that people actually like, and it actually is changing their life positively, they will make sure that the company stays. So it's not just a transaction with the company. So we have now put over $400 million in the market. We have invested from IIX.
Yeah.
And we actually have never had a single credit loss. And I think I 100% attributed it to the fact that we measure the impact, and we have been able to show the correlation that deeper impact reduces the risk. So yes, in the book, I do talk about, how I measure the impact, and how a lot of it came when I was teaching, at the university, and my students, and so on and so forth. Yes.
Yeah, but how has that worked for IIX so far? Like you said, there's been zero default. You also help other companies in the impact space use the same metrics and sort of
Yeah.
grow their company, right? So, would you say that it's scaled at the level that you wanted it to? Is
Well,
there a
it's
long way to
actually
go?
definitely, yeah, no, that's a good question. It definitely is scaling, because we have a fintech platform, we issue bonds, so we use it in all of those. And now we have opened it up, and we actually are doing it for other people as well. They're measuring the impact, and anyone can come. It's called
Yeah.
IX Values, and they can come and measure the impact of their company, put the information in, and it's like it spits out a report. And I think what's actually exciting about all of this is now we just with the American government, us, the Australian government, Sherman and Sterling, and Z Bank. So a group of us came together, and we created a whole new asset class called Orange. So orange is the color of SDG 5, which is for gender equality. So we basically created a whole new asset class. They're green bonds, so now they're orange bonds, so about gender, where gender and climate come together. And all of those measurements actually are being done by IX Values as well. So we now have Orange Seal. A number of the tech companies are now actually embracing it. So you'll start seeing them from the new year. And it's very, very exciting, because I think, it's not only just measurement, but making sure now everyone knows about it as well, the consumers.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, and I mean it's no surprise that I'm wearing orange to support
Yes,
your
exactly.
orange
I see
initiative.
that. Good for you, Nalini. I actually enjoyed. I
Yeah.
actually noticed it. Yes.
No, but coming back a little bit to your entrepreneurship journey, I remember your One Nest story, and how you
Hmm.
tried to help artisans in the developing world or the global south
Hmm.
connect with the global north. And what do you think, like, and I know that the VCs, the really male packed rooms that you walked into to get funding, it was hard and it was almost impossible. Do you think if you were doing One Nest today, or if anyone was doing something like a One Nest or like an impact venture today, what can they learn from how things are changing, like your these metrics that you talked about, and how people are coming
Yeah.
around, hopefully? Will things be easier for these
Well,
impactpreneurs?
when I was out there, when I was back in the States, and I did my first company, One Nest, which frankly is a predecessor of Etsy. And it is very interesting. I remember when I was going around, people would say how impossible it was. And then yet, with similar ideas, including Etsy, and they were all white male, they all raised money, much, much more than I did. And So I think I'll just leave it there. So I think the reality is, even today, less than 2% of the money goes to women and people of color. So have things changed? Sadly, it hasn't. So I do think that, if I were to do One Nest again today, it will be, of course, a more refined version of Etsy with, I would say, financing and all that in it. But I think I have realized that the world hasn't changed as much as I would like to change. And maybe again, hopefully the next Doreen who is out there will have an easier time. But I wish I could say it was much, much, much easier. So,
Yeah.
but it's not. And so Even interesting, I talk about it in the book. When I created the Women's Livelihood Bond, it's a very sophisticated structure, and how I actually got so much pressure to change the name. And then also, because they said, the bankers that we were working with, they said the Women's Livelihood Bond, no one would buy it because it
It
sounds
sounds
like,
risky, right? I
it sounds
remember.
risky. It sounds, and I said I will not change it. And I remember, even when we went out to sell it, I actually realized that if I showed up and I said I'm going to sell Women's Livelihood Bond, no one's going to buy it, and that was exactly the case. But when I had a Caucasian man front it and actually go and sell it, it actually sold.
Yeah.
So I think it is just the sad reality, of the world even today.
Yeah. So, like, my learning from this is get a white male co-founder if
Yeah, no
you're going
kidding.
to.
But I think the thing is that, once again, remember, I always say that I took a bullet, okay, and I lost the battle of feminism with that, but I won the war because
Yeah.
I managed to sell. Think about it. The first bond was 8.5 million, and next week I'm selling a bond which is 100 million. That's the sixth one. Okay, so
Yeah.
I definitely won the war.
So proud of
So
you for that.
now, thank you. But I think, again, it really shows that for me, it really was, I was going to get there. Okay. So if it meant I have to put a Caucasian man in front, I will do it if you want that. But you know what? I will get my way eventually. And this is just the path.
So this is Defiance optimism, right? I think you really just you nailed it there with the message that. But I would like you in your own words to tell our audience. I don't think we have audience questions, but I would love to keep going. Like, tell me a bit in your own words, what is Defiance optimism? How can people like me and men and women out there who are always struggling with the difference that they feel between them and the rest of the world, how can they imbibe this?
Defiant optimism, I really feel, is having the courage to take on a system and make it work for everyone. For me, it really was a financial system. And I think, for you, it can be anything, right? So whatever takes your fancy, but making sure that you're working towards something that includes everyone, creates societal good, and actually, makes people actually smile, right? So I do think that that is very, very important in terms of, kind of how to sort of get there. um, I have to say the first and foremost is having courage and really having the energy to have that courage. Okay. And what do I mean by that? And once again, it's a generational thing. Okay. I do feel, with the younger generation, where you guys have much more so than my generation, where I felt like a freak when I talked like this. In your generation, if this is cool, like, it's like, okay, we want to change the world. But I think realizing also, you can't change the world just by sitting behind a computer. Okay. Changing the world actually means even doing simple things like picking up the phone and calling someone. Okay.
Yeah.
Literally. So changing the world really means being committed and saying, you know what, I will go and read a book, to an elderly person who's all alone. Okay.
Yeah.
It really means that, I will go and myself go and plant 10 trees rather than sign an online pledge and just say, I have done my part. Right. So
Yeah.
I do feel that it takes that courage and energy to be able to, take it on, get those hands dirty, and be able to sort of, you know, push the envelope, because the world does not change just by being behind the computer screen.
Yeah.
Okay. If you have to say something, say it with your own words, say it with your own name. Right. So I do think that's very, very important. So I think that courage is very important, to be able to have the courage to be able to face things.
And know that there are going to be odds in your way, odds stacked
Yes.
against you. There are going to be people that would uh, won't want to listen to you, instead would want to listen to
Hmm.
the person that's more adherent to the code. But keep going. I think that's
Keep
what.
going. But also, I do think that you appreciate it much more when you have the win. You know,
Yeah.
I do feel it feels so much more fun when you actually win after sort of getting beaten up, you know?
Yeah.
So I do feel that that is also important part of life, kind of knowing that you will be beaten up and it is okay. It's okay. You just need to kind of have that resilience and get up. So, at IAX, we have this thing, we realize because what we do is very hard. It is very hard. And we get the 1,000 no's and we'll get one yes, right? But we have chipped away and we have done so much. So I always say that whoever works at IAX and is successful, it defines them through four letters. Okay. And the four letters, believe it or not, it's PREM. So PREM is what? Prem. Prem is Hindi and Sanskrit and Bengali for love. So
Yeah.
these people have a lot of love. So what are these four letters? What do they stand for? P is for passion.
Yeah.
R is for resilient. E is for equitable, and M is for maverick. Okay. So
Yeah.
you need to have these four qualities if you're going to be successful at IAX. And again, yes, if I look at myself, some days I'm a maverick, some days I'm a passionate, almost all the time I'm passionate, extremely resilient. And yes, I deeply feel with every cell of my body about an equitable world. So I think the thing is, it's very interesting because we ask people this question: how are you, Prem? Okay.
Oh.
And it is very interesting when we get the answer, and trust me, a lot of people, they get very baffled. They're like, oh my god, I don't know what I'm passionate about. Wow, resilient, I guess I'm resilient. But again, it tells you that this is the first time they're thinking about it,
Yeah.
right? So I would actually tell your audience, think about what's your prem, what's your love, okay, what's your passion, resilience, the equitable part of you, and what's the maverick. Because I
Yeah.
think if you can identify that, I think you are onto a great journey.
With that, I think there's no better place to end today's talk. And I will go back and explore my prem to start with after this for sure. Thank you so much for being with us, Doreen. Any last words for our audience? Like, I'm going to go sign the orange pledge today for sure. But
Yes,
if
please
you
do.
but if yeah, and for any of us who are curious, you will find more details online. But Doreen, do you want to share something about it?
Yes. So please, there are a couple of things. Of course, buy the book, and please do write a review. It does help for other people to kind of know what the book is about. But then also, very importantly, as Nalini said, I just said, okay, just don't sign a pledge, but it helps. That's the first step. So if you can go to IX website, it's ixglobal.com, and you will see the orange pledge coming up there. So again, let's make the world equitable, and let's take on the climate being equitable.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Doreen.
you. All right.
Bye.